the Darshan Chakra, the special weapon of the Supreme Lord, appeared and destroyed that magical demon, just like the demon was sort of incinerated on the spot. And then, but that wasn't the end of it, then the chakra of the Lord turned and started moving towards Devasa Muni. Because what Devasa Muni had done was extremely offensive. To try and kill someone because they ate, and he didn't even eat, but because they took something before you, that is like the overreaction of the century, pretty much. It's just, a terrible thing to do. But Devasa Muni sometimes does things like that. So now, Ambarish, being a great devotee, very dear to the Lord, and the devotees being sort of like the children of the Lord. And I know many of you are parents, and you know how you feel about your children. If there's some danger or something, it's a matter of extreme concern, generally for the parents. So the Lord was so concerned. The chakra destroyed that demon and then turned on Devasa Muni to kill him. So what did Devasa Muni do? Now the chakra's coming and he knows that it's going to kill me. Did he do like Maharaj Ambarish and just pray, my Lord, whatever you desire, but please be merciful? No. He ran for it. He headed for the hills, as they say. He just took off, trying to escape the chakra. But you can't escape the chakra because it's the Lord's weapon. And actually, the chakra is not just a weapon. The chakra is a person. The chakra is a person who assumes the form of a weapon as a service to the Lord. Like Lord Vishnu, you may know, he has chakra, he has club, and he has lotus. And what else does he have? Shank. He has the conch. Yeah, these are his 4 traditional symbols or, things that he carries. But each one of them's a person. If you happen to have a look, if you have a set of Srimad Bhagavatam at home, which, if you don't have, don't mind me saying it, it would be a really good idea for you to get a set, then look on the cover, or I think the back cover, of the 2nd volume of the 11th canto, as I recall, or maybe the back of the 12th canto. But on the back of one of those books, there's a picture of Lord Krishna. In front of him is the hunter. What was his name? Jara. The hunter who fired the arrow at the Lord's foot when the Lord was sitting behind a tree. Anyway, that's a long story, but in the picture there, the hunter's bowing down because he knows, I fired an arrow at the foot of the Supreme Lord. What on earth? He knows he's committed a great offense. But there, surrounding the Lord, are his 4 symbols: the chakra, the club, the lotus, and the conch. But they're in personal form. They're there as persons. They're not there just as sort of like things. They're there as persons. So this chakra is a person who thinks, I mean, he's a real person and he's an extremely important person. He's not just a weapon like a gun. It's just a thing. It's just an object. He's a person. So he knew this Devasumuni has committed what an offense against a great devotee. He should be killed. And started pursuing Devasumuni, who started running. And Devasumuni, I'll cut it could be a very long story, but I'll cut it very short, is that he approached different people to protect him. Go and try Lord Shiva. So he went to Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva is a very interesting person among many other things. He is one of the guardians of the spiritual world. He's one of the guardians, even though he's within this world, but he's also guarding the spiritual world. So in that way, he has access to the spiritual world. So Shiva told Devasumuni, I can't help you, because this is the weapon of the Supreme Lord. But what I can do is give you special temporary entrance into the spiritual world, just temporarily, and you can approach the Lord yourself because it's his weapon, and maybe he'll stop his weapon. So Lord Shiva kind of opened a portal into Goloka Vrindavan, and Devasumuni, just temporarily, it was not that he's now gone back to the spiritual world, but he was allowed to enter temporarily, and then he'd have to come out. So he entered temporarily and appealed to the Lord that, in fact, he told him, to paraphrase, that you are famous for having a very kind heart, a very merciful heart. You're very, very kind to those who are suffering. And me, I'm suffering extremely badly. I'm just about to be killed by your chakra. So, with some mercy from your kind, merciful heart, will you please save me from this, your weapon? And the Lord told him a few things. We're going to read 4 verses, I think, that the Lord spoke. But the first thing the Lord said is that you're right. I have a very merciful heart, and I feel for those who are suffering so much. But the problem is that now I don't have a heart any longer. I gave my heart away. Yeah, he says, I gave my heart to my devotees. So if you want some mercy from my merciful heart, you have to approach Ambarish Maharaj himself and appeal to him, not me, because you offended him. You approach him, and surely he'll be merciful. Yeah, so that was the first thing, one of the first things he said. Now I'm going to read these verses, 4 verses, where the Lord is speaking to Devatayar. One interesting little point I could term, a title for an important person. So Bhagavan, Bhaga, Bhaga, means opulence. And Van means possessor. So Bhagavan means he who possesses all opulence, everything. In other words, that's God. Like in Bhagavad Gita, those of you who've read Bhagavad Gita or, at least read some of Bhagavad Gita, you would see whenever Krishna speaks, it never says ever, Sri Krishna Uvacha. You could say that, why not? Wouldn't be wrong. But every single time, without exception, it only says Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, because it's making the point, this is Bhagavan, this is the Lord who's speaking now. Yeah. Whereas Krishna is a name. Like, there's Krishna back there. Haribol Krishna. Yeah. I met in Mauritius a few years ago. I just arrived and there were a group of devotees, and I asked one young fellow, kind of maybe 20 or late teens, asked him, what's your name? He said, Krishna. I said, really? I've been looking for you for years. He was the wrong Krishna, though. Okay, so I read the Sanskrit. Here's the translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said to the Brahman, I am completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not at all independent. Because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires, I sit only within the cause of their hearts. What to speak of my devotee, even those who are devotees of my devotee are very dear to me. I mean, let me just say a couple of words about that. The Lord is not independent. If you're familiar at all with Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, there's his mother, Yashoda. And, for some years, Krishna was just at home before he started going out herding the cows. Well, first of all, he was herding the calves. So for some years, he was just at home, 24/7, with his mother. And sometimes his mother, like when his father, Nanda Maharaj, would come home, then Mother Yashoda, as the mother, she's a senior and she's an authority for the children. So Mother Yashoda would tell Krishna, bring your father's shoes. And she wouldn't say, would you mind, please, bringing your father's shoes? She would tell him, bring your father's shoes. It's an order. And you know what Krishna would do? Well, I tell you what he wouldn't do. He wouldn't tell her that, listen, I happen to be God. So don't tell me what to do. I'll tell you what to do, all right? You want your husband's shoes brought? You bring them. So Krishna did not do that. Krishna brought the shoes. Yeah. And indeed, he brought them on his head. Yeah. So there's a famous picture of Krishna carrying his father's shoes on his head. And his father is sort of bowing down before him. So Mother Yashoda would order Krishna around, at least to some degree, as mothers do. Isn't it, mothers? When they're small, not when they're big. They say up to the age of 16. Then you should just treat them as friends. Up to the age of 16, you're authority. And you can treat them, even Prabhupada said, strongly, like a tiger. Train them to become, proper human beings. So, Mother Yashoda would tell Krishna, do this, do that, and Krishna would do those things. So, because, as the Lord himself says here, I am completely under the control of this. He means particularly the very elevated devotees, but anyone who's basically a devotee is included. And Krishna helps his devotees in so many ways, even very new devotees. So yes, let's go on to it's the next verse, 64. Naham atmanam ashase mad bhaktai sadhubir vina shriyam chadyanti kim brahman yesham gatir laham para. O best of the Brahmins, without saintly persons, devotees, for whom I am the only destination, I do not desire to enjoy my transcendental bliss and my supreme opulence. Without the devotees, the company of the devotees, even the Lord himself in his kingdom, which is opulent and magnificent, way beyond our imagination, but he's not interested in all those things unless the devotees are there. Without the devotees, it all becomes empty. And let's see what verse now, 66. Mai nirbada hridaya sadhava samadarshana vashe kuravanti mam bhaktya sat striya sat patim yata. Sat striya. Sat means, you could say it means chaste. Sat means very cultured, and striya means wife. I know in Hindi, but in Sanskrit it means wife. Sat striya means very chaste, very cultured wife. And sat pati means a husband who also has character like that, like a real gentleman. So, anyway, the verse, as chaste women bring their gentle husbands under control by service, the pure devotees who are equal to everyone and completely attached to me in the core of the heart, bring me under their full control. The devotees bring the Lord, the advanced devotees particularly, they bring the Lord completely under their control, so the Lord will do what they say. Just like a chaste woman brings her gentle husband under control not by nagging, you know what I mean? Sorry, I shouldn't have said that, should I? But, you are cultured people. But unfortunately in this world there's a lot of people who are not cultured. And how many husbands have I had complain to me that their wife, anyway, she nags them, henpecking. I'm sure none of you, so I am not saying anything against any of you at all. But through service, in fact, it's actually explained, would you believe, in not this chapter, but just in the 10th chapter, this is chapter 4, in the 10th chapter of the 9th canto. I'll just read the English translation. That chapter is about the pastimes of Lord Ram. And Mother Sita's character is described in verse 55 of that 10th chapter of the 9th canto. Mother Sita was very submissive, faithful, shy, and chaste. always understanding the attitude of her husband. Thus, by her character and her love and service, she completely attracted the mind of the Lord. I mean, this is how it's meant to work, actually, through love and service of the wife to the husband and the husband to the wife. So, right, anyway, back to our verses. So, yeah, again, the idea is that the very qualified wife, through her service and just her general niceness and affection, brings her husband under control, and he'll do whatever she says. He'll buy her whatever she wants, and etc., etc. So, yes, so let me read, what shall I read? Another verse. Yeah, I'll read verse 68, and this is sort of the culmination of it. Sadavo ridayam mahyam, sadunam ridayam twaham. Madanya te na jananti, naham tebyo manag api. The pure devotee is always within the core of my heart, and I'm always in the heart of the pure devotee. My devotees do not know anything else but me, and I do not know anyone else but them. So this is the thing, Generally, people follow religion, whatever, some sort of religion, whether it be some version of Hinduism. There's so many versions of Hinduism, be it Christianity, Islam, Judaism, even Buddhism. People follow. I mean, it's just sort of part of human nature. The majority of people follow some sort of religion. But generally speaking, they follow whatever it may be because they're looking for some mercy, some improvement in their lives. It's not just, they don't just glorify the Lord and leave it at that. They generally have requests that they want, things they want, which, is okay. It's better than just being a gross materialist and not caring about God at all. Yeah. Of course, it's better, rather than think what God can do for me, better to think, what can I do for him? That's actually the right perspective. But anyway, if one becomes a devotee, and, of course, there are different levels of devotees. If one really becomes a very serious devotee and really tries one's best to serve the Lord and not be too demanding, but more just in the mood of a servant. And for me, whatever you like, give me whatever you feel's good for me. Because oftentimes we don't know what's good for us. And we approach God for something which it may actually be bad for us, or at least not really good for us. Prabhupada told the story. He told a couple of stories, went all over the ground. And she prayed, "Oh, Krishna, help!" And Krishna appeared to her and said, "Yes, what do you want?" And she said, "Could you please put the wood back on my head? I'm too tired to pick it up." And Krishna said, "Sure, no problem." And he did. And she went to the market, made more money than usual. And she thought, wow, I got the mercy today. Of course, she could have asked him if money was like a real problem. She could have asked, well, could you please give me $10 billion? Or something like that. And she would never have had to work for the rest of her life. Anyway, Prabhupada told a few stories like that. People who ask for something, but it's just like they're shortchanging themselves in a big way. So, yes. So if we become, devotees are on different levels, but if we at least become a little bit of a devotee, not too much, but, trying to follow to the best of our ability. I mean, you don't have to sort of strain yourself and like that. But you try and do some service to the Lord, chant his names as you're able, as time permits. Then he'll reciprocate. He'll definitely reciprocate in so many ways. There's a famous story, some of you would be familiar with it, of Sudama the Brahmin. Sudama the Brahmin was a school friend of Krishna. They were at school together in the school of Sandipani Muni in Ujjain. In Ujjain. We have an Ujjain Vasi here. And so they were together for a number of years, like, 15 years or something like that, they were together. And anyway, it could be a long story, but then when they left school, Krishna went to Dwarka and became a prince in Dwarka. Very wealthy, very powerful family in Dwarka. And Sudama was a Brahmin, and he went actually to Porbanda. If any of you, we have a few Gujaratis here, don't we? Krishna is an adopted Gujarati. I'm sure he can speak Gujarati too. Right, so Sudama the Brahmin was living a very poor existence, just living on donations. So, he just had a one-roomed straw hut where he lived with his wife and 2 young children. But he was so poor, he couldn't provide food every day. Sometimes, some days, there'd be no food. And his wife told him one day, I don't mind, I understand your situation. I don't mind, I'm not upset about it. But the children, sometimes we can't eat for a whole day. The children don't understand, and it's very difficult for them. So, Krishna, your old school friend, is a prince in Dwarka, not so far away. Could you please go and ask him, could he give you some money or some jewelry or something so we can at least feed our children? And Sudama agreed, right, I'll do it. And off he went. And it's another one of our long stories. But to keep it short, he arrived in Dwarka, and Krishna was so happy to see him after all these years. And Sudama was so happy to see Krishna. All they did, they just sat together for the rest of the day and the whole night and just talked about what they've been doing and what's happening and how is this one and how is that one, just catching up with each other. And then Sudama left the next morning, walking. And he's walking towards Porbanda, and suddenly he's almost home, and suddenly he realized, I forgot to ask Krishna for some money to feed the children. Oh, that was my mission. And I just, wow, what a fool I am. I failed in my mission. And then he thought, actually, I'm glad he didn't give me money, because I would have probably got carried away and got a big Lani house in Porbanda and a big Lani motor car, Mercedes-Benz, the black one, the big one, and 84-inch television to watch Kuch Kuch Hota Hey. I would have probably become degraded if he gave me money. So I'm glad he didn't give me money. And he walked on a little further, and he came to where his house, not house, but hut was. But what happened? He saw his hut is no longer there. Now there's a palace, Raj Mahal, big palace. And he thought, whoops, I took the wrong turning. But then his wife came out of the palace, beautifully dressed and with jewelry and so on. And Sudama understood. Krishna did that. He did that. And I didn't even ask him. And I was only going to ask him for enough to feed the children. But look what Krishna did. So you see, this is a very nice story. It's actually in Srimad Bhagavatam in the 10th canto.